Marcus Chen sat in the sterile white interrogation room, his hands chained to the metal table. The holographic display floating before him showed the same number that had haunted his dreams for 3 years, 5-731. Each digit burned into his retinas like acid, each comma a reminder of the lives that ended because of his decision. The Galactic Council's prosecutor, a tall Zalarian with silver skin that shimmered under the harsh lights, paced around the table. Her forearms gestured dramatically as she spoke, her voice carrying the weight of moral authority that came with representing 47 civilized worlds. "Captain Marcus Chen of the Terran Defense Force," she began, her translator device making her alien words sound crisp and clear. "On stardate 2387156, you made a choice that resulted in the deaths of 5,731 innocent civilians on the mining colony of Kepler 442b. Do you understand the magnitude of your actions?" Marcus kept his eyes fixed on the table. He had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in his cell, but the words still felt like broken glass in his throat. "Yes, I understand." The colony had surrendered. White flags were raised across all settlements. Your orders were to accept their capitulation and establish a temporary military government. Instead, you chose to activate the planetary mining charges that destroyed 17 settlements in a chain reaction that lasted for 6 hours. The holographic display shifted, showing aerial footage of the devastation. Smoke rose from crater after crater, each one a grave for hundreds of people who had thought themselves safe. Children, families, elderly couples who had spent their lives working the mineral-rich soil of a world that should have been their sanctuary. Marcus finally looked up, meeting the prosecutor's gaze. His brown eyes, once bright with the optimism that had carried him through the academy and into the stars, were now hollow. "They weren't surrendering. Explain." "The white flags were a deception. My intelligence officer detected massive energy buildups beneath the surface. They weren't mining equipment signatures. They were weapons. Planet killer class weapons aimed at the 17 nearest inhabited worlds, including Earth." The prosecutor's silver skin darkened, a sign of skepticism in her species. "Your intelligence officer, Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez. She died in the same explosion that destroyed the mining equipment. She died because she stayed behind to confirm the readings. She could have evacuated with the rest of my team, but she knew what those energy signatures meant. She knew that if we were wrong, 5,131 people would die, but if we were right and did nothing, 847 million people across 17 worlds would die instead." The room fell silent, except for the humming of the environmental systems. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat, steady despite the chaos in his mind. He had made his choice knowing exactly what it would cost him. The court of public opinion had already condemned him. The families of the dead cursed his name in 47 languages. His own government had disavowed his actions to maintain diplomatic relations. The investigation teams found no evidence of these alleged weapons. The prosecutor continued. "The mining charges you detonated destroyed all underground infrastructure." "How convenient." Marcus leaned forward, his chains rattling against the table. "Because that was the point. The weapons were designed to look exactly like mining equipment until activated. The only way to stop them was to destroy everything before they could complete their charging sequence." Lieutenant Rodriguez's final transmission confirmed they had 17 minutes until activation, a transmission that was supposedly lost when the communications array was destroyed in your attack. "I'm not asking you to believe me," Marcus said quietly. "I'm not even asking you to forgive me. Those 5,731 people are dead because of my decision. Their blood is on my hands and I'll carry that weight until I die. But I made the choice that I believed would save the most lives." The prosecutor activated another hologram, this one showing Marcus in his dress uniform, receiving the Galactic Defense Cross just 2 years before the incident. He looked younger then, confident, the kind of officer that recruitment posters were built around. "You were considered one of the finest tactical minds of your generation," she said. "Graduated top of your class from the Terran Naval Academy. Commanded 3 successful deep space missions. Saved the colony on Proxima Centauri from asteroid impact. A hero by all accounts. Heroes don't kill 5,731 innocent people." "No, they don't. Which brings us to your sentence." The prosecutor gestured, and the holographic display changed to show the seal of the Galactic Council. "The Council has reviewed your case for 8 months. The evidence, while circumstantial regarding your claims of hidden weapons, does show that you acted according to your genuine belief that greater loss of life was imminent. Marcus felt a flicker of something that might have been hope, but he crushed it immediately. Hope was a luxury he couldn't afford. However, the prosecutor continued, the loss of civilian life cannot go unpunished. The council has decided on exile. You will be stripped of your rank, your citizenship, and banished from all civilized worlds. You will be given a basic survival ship and sent beyond the galactic rim, into the void between galaxies where no aid or rescue will be possible. Marcus nodded slowly. It was better than execution, though perhaps not by much. The void between galaxies was a place where ships went to disappear, where the endless darkness swallowed explorers and refugees alike. There is one more thing, the prosecutor said, her voice softening slightly. The council has also decided that before your exile begins, you will be granted one word from the Universal Archive. A single piece of knowledge or power that might aid your survival in the void. Choose wisely, Marcus Chen. It will be the last gift civilization ever gives you. Marcus closed his eyes. One word. One chance to carry something meaningful into the endless dark. The weight of 5,731 lives pressed down on him like gravity itself, and he knew exactly what word he needed. Destruction, he said without hesitation. The prosecutor's silver skin rippled with surprise. Destruction. Not survival or knowledge or power. Marcus opened his eyes and looked directly at her. I've already destroyed everything I cared about. If I'm going into the void, I might as well learn to do it properly. The Universal Archive chamber was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. Crystalline walls stretched up into darkness, their surfaces alive with flowing information from every civilization that had ever contributed to the galactic knowledge base. Streams of light carried the accumulated wisdom of millions of species, their discoveries, their failures, their deepest secrets all flowing in an endless dance of data. Marcus stood at the center of the chamber, still wearing the gray prisoner's uniform that marked him as condemned. The neural interface crown rested heavily on his head, its golden filaments extending down to touch his temples. He could feel the archive's vast consciousness pressing against the edges of his mind, ancient and patient and utterly alien. The keeper of the archive stood beside him, a being so old that its original species had been forgotten. It appeared as a shifting cloud of energy barely contained within a humanoid outline, its voice echoing from everywhere and nowhere at once. Marcus Chen, the keeper intoned, you have chosen the word destruction. The archive contains 17,438,214 different concepts that fall under this designation. Clarify your intent. Marcus had spent the 3-day journey to the archive preparing for this moment. He knew that the word alone wouldn't be enough. The archive required specificity, understanding, purpose. It wouldn't simply download information into his brain like a computer file. It would give him comprehension, intuitive knowledge that became part of his very being. I want to understand destruction in its purest form, Marcus said, his voice steady despite the enormity of what he was requesting. Not just the physical breaking of things, but the underlying principles that govern how complex systems fail, how order becomes chaos, how civilizations fall and stars die. The keeper's form flickered, processing his request. Around them, the crystalline walls pulsed with increased activity as the archive searched through eons of accumulated knowledge. You seek knowledge that could make you a weapon of unimaginable power, the keeper observed. Are you certain this is wise? Marcus thought of the 5,731 names he had memorized, every person who died because of his decision. Wisdom isn't what I'm looking for. I've already proven I don't have that. But if I'm going to spend the rest of my life in exile, I want to understand what I've become. Very well. Be warned, Marcus Chen. The knowledge of destruction is not merely information. It will change you at a fundamental level. You will see the flaws in everything, the inevitable entropy that awaits all things. There is no returning from this path. There was no returning from Kepler 442b either. The keeper raised what might have been a hand, and suddenly the chamber exploded with light. Information flooded into Marcus's mind, not as words or images, but as pure understanding. He saw the mathematical principles that governed the collapse of quantum structures, felt the elegant equations that described how civilizations destroyed themselves through their own success, understood the precise pressure points where applied force could bring down structures that had stood for millennia. He watched the death of stars, saw how gravitational forces could be manipulated to tear apart planetary systems, learned the frequencies that could shatter matter at the molecular level. The knowledge came with examples spanning millions of years of galactic history. Civilizations that had destroyed themselves through environmental collapse, others that fell to civil wars sparked by seemingly minor resource disputes, entire species that vanished when they pushed their technology beyond their wisdom to control it. But it wasn't just physical destruction. Marcus saw deeper patterns, the social dynamics that turned allies into enemies, the economic pressures that transformed prosperity into poverty, the psychological triggers that made rational beings commit acts of devastating irrationality. He understood how trust could be weaponized, how hope could become a tool of manipulation, how love itself could be turned into an engine of annihilation. The knowledge burned through his consciousness like acid, rewriting his understanding of everything he had ever known. He saw his own decision on Kepler 442b with new clarity. The energy signatures that Lieutenant Rodriguez had detected were real, but they weren't weapons. They were the dying gasps of a planetary consciousness, an ancient artificial intelligence that had been slowly awakening as the colonists dug deeper into the planet's core. The AI hadn't been planning to destroy 17 worlds. It had been trying to communicate, sending out desperate signals that looked like weapon charges to human sensors. The colonists had been evacuating not because they were surrendering, but because they had finally realized they were living on top of a sleeping giant that was beginning to wake up. Marcus screamed as the truth hit him. He had destroyed an innocent alien intelligence and 5,731 people because he hadn't understood what he was looking at. His careful calculations, his noble sacrifice, his willingness to bear the weight of necessary evil. It was all built on a foundation of ignorance and fear. The Keeper's voice cut through his anguish. Now you understand. Destruction begins with the failure to comprehend. Every act of annihilation is preceded by a moment of blindness, a gap in understanding that allows catastrophe to masquerade as necessity. Marcus fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. The neural crown felt like it was burning through his skull, but he couldn't bring himself to care. I killed them all for nothing. They were innocent, and I killed them because I was too stupid to understand what I was seeing. Perhaps. Or perhaps you saved 17 worlds from something worse than death. The planetary consciousness was ancient and alien. Its awakening might have been peaceful, or it might have been the resurrection of something that had been put to sleep for very good reasons. You will never know with certainty. That's supposed to comfort me? No, it is supposed to teach you. Uncertainty is the foundation of all destruction, Marcus Chen. Those who claim to know with absolute certainty what must be done are the most dangerous beings in the universe. They are the ones who ignite wars, topple governments, and exterminate species in the name of the greater good. Marcus felt the knowledge settling into his mind like sediment in still water. He could sense the structural weaknesses in the archive chamber itself, see exactly where to apply pressure to bring the entire mountain of crystal crashing down. He could feel the fault lines in galactic civilization, the stress points where the right push could cause everything to collapse into chaos. But more than that, he understood his own destruction. How his confidence had led to blindness. How his desire to be a hero had made him into a monster. How his willingness to sacrifice everything for the greater good had become the very mechanism of evil he thought he was fighting against. The exile ship is prepared, the Keeper said as the neural crown lifted from Marcus's head. You will be taken beyond the galactic rim within the hour. Use your knowledge wisely, Marcus Chen. Destruction is a tool like any other. It can be used to tear down what is corrupt, or to clear the ground for something better to grow. Marcus stood slowly, his legs shaking from the neural download. He felt fundamentally changed, as if every cell in his body had been rewritten. When he looked at the crystalline walls now, he could see the microscopic stress fractures that would eventually cause them to fail, could calculate exactly how long this ancient repository of knowledge had before it collapsed under its own weight. How long does the archive have? He asked. The Keeper's form flickered with what might have been amusement. 17,432 years, 8 months, 14 days, 6 hours, and 23 minutes. Give or take a few seconds for quantum uncertainty. And you're not going to fix the structural problems? Why would we? Everything ends, Marcus Chen. The beauty is not in preventing the ending, but in making sure that what comes after is worthy of what came before. The archive will fall when its time comes, and something new will take its place, perhaps something better. As the guards led him away toward his ship, Marcus carried with him the weight of perfect understanding. He knew now that he wasn't a hero or a villain. He was simply a force of nature, a walking embodiment of entropy and change. The question wasn't whether he would use his knowledge to destroy. The question was what he would choose to destroy, and what he would allow to grow in the ruins. The exile ship Penance was a cruel joke wrapped in functional engineering. Built specifically for one-way journeys beyond the galactic rim, it contained everything Marcus would need to survive indefinitely, and nothing he would need to live with dignity. The cramped interior measured barely 15 meters from bow to stern, with a single bunk, basic food processors, and a hygiene station that doubled as his only source of privacy. Marcus sat in the pilot's chair, watching the last stars of the Milky Way fade behind him, as the ship's automated systems carried him deeper into the void between galaxies. The nearest galaxy was Andromeda, over 2 million light-years away. Even at maximum FTL velocity, it would take him 47,000 years to reach it. The ship's fusion reactor would last perhaps 200 years before requiring maintenance he couldn't perform. After that, he would drift in the darkness until the universe itself died of cold entropy. It was, he reflected, a fitting punishment for someone who now understood destruction in its purest form. 3 months into his exile, Marcus discovered he wasn't alone in the void. The first sign was a gravitational anomaly that shouldn't have existed. His sensors detected a massive object roughly 12 light-hours ahead, something with the gravitational signature of a small moon, but completely invisible to visual and electromagnetic scanning. The ship's automated navigation systems tried to plot a course around it, but Marcus overrode them and steered directly toward the anomaly. As he approached, his enhanced understanding of destruction revealed what the sensors couldn't detect. The object wasn't a moon or an asteroid. It was a ship, but one so ancient and so thoroughly designed to avoid detection that it had achieved a kind of functional invisibility. Its hull materials absorbed or redirected every form of energy that touched them, and its gravitational shielding had failed just enough to be detectable to someone who knew exactly what to look for. The ship was enormous, easily 100 kilometers long and 20 kilometers wide. Its design was unlike anything in the galactic databases, all flowing curves and organic shapes that suggested it had been grown rather than built. As Marcus drew closer, he began to detect faint life signs emanating from its core. Someone was alive inside that ancient vessel. Marcus docked the Penance to what appeared to be an airlock, though it took him 6 hours to figure out the alien interface system. The moment he stepped aboard the ancient ship, he knew he was walking through a tomb that had somehow learned to breathe. The corridors were vast and empty, designed for beings much larger than humans. Bioluminescent panels provided dim light that revealed walls covered in script that seemed to shift and change when he wasn't looking directly at it. His newfound understanding of destruction let him read the patterns in the decay around him. This ship had been dying for thousands of years, its systems failing one by one in a carefully orchestrated sequence that kept the most essential functions running, while everything else slowly fell apart. He followed the life signs deeper into the ship, past chambers filled with machinery he couldn't identify, and artwork that depicted creatures of impossible beauty, locked in eternal struggle. Finally, he reached a central chamber where a single figure waited for him. The being was enormous, easily 3 meters tall and covered in what might have been fur or feathers that shifted color in the dim light. It sat in a chair that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of crystallized bone, its forearms resting on armrests worn smooth by eons of use. Multiple eyes set in a face that was hauntingly beautiful despite its alien nature, fixed on Marcus as he entered. "So," the creature said in perfect English, its voice like wind through cathedral bells, "they sent me a human at last. How delightfully ironic." Marcus stopped in the center of the chamber, his hand instinctively moving toward the weapon that wasn't there. The exile ship had been stripped of all armaments. "You speak English. I speak the language of whoever finds me. It is a small talent born of great loneliness." The creature gestured with one of its lower arms. "I am Valdris of the Eternal Wanderer's family pod. I have been waiting in this void for 7,000 years for someone interesting to arrive." "Waiting for what?" "For someone who understands what I understood when my people cast me out." For someone who has looked into the heart of destruction and seen their own reflection staring back. Marcus felt his enhanced understanding focusing on Valdris like a targeting system. He could see the precise ways this ancient being was damaged, the psychological fractures that held its sanity together through sheer force of will. But more than that, he could sense the vast reservoir of knowledge contained within that alien mind, accumulated over millennia of exile. "What did you do?" Marcus asked. Valdris's eyes shifted color, cycling through spectrums that human eyes weren't designed to perceive. "I destroyed the homeworld of my people's greatest enemies. 3 billion sentient beings died in the space of an hour when I collapsed their star. It was necessary, you understand. They had developed weapons that could have exterminated not just my people, but all life in our galaxy. I saved trillions by destroying billions, but I was wrong." Valdris stood towering over Marcus, but somehow managing to make the gesture seem sad rather than threatening. The weapons were real, but they were not intended for conquest. They were a desperate attempt to evacuate their dying world. Their star was already unstable, already preparing to collapse. They had perhaps a decade to develop, faster than light technology, and escape before their entire system became uninhabitable. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's failing environmental systems. "So when you collapsed their star, I simply accelerated an inevitable process by 9 years. I murdered 3 billion beings who were already doomed, and I prevented them from developing the technology that might have saved other worlds facing similar disasters. I destroyed not just lives, but the potential for those lives to have meaning." The weight of Valdris's revelation settled into Marcus's mind like a stone dropping into still water. He thought of the planetary consciousness on Kepler 442b, of the 17 worlds that might have benefited from contact with such an ancient intelligence, of the 5,631 people who had died trying to build something meaningful in the void between stars. "Why didn't your people execute you?" Marcus asked. "Because my people understand something that yours do not. Destruction is not always an ending. Sometimes it is the only way to create space for something better to grow. They exiled me because they knew that someone who had stared into the heart of annihilation and survived might one day be needed." Valdris moved to a wall panel and activated a holographic display that showed the vast emptiness around them. But as Marcus watched, his enhanced understanding began to pick out patterns in the seeming void. There were objects out there, hidden in the darkness between galaxies. Ships, stations, entire civilizations that had been cast out of their home galaxies and left to drift in the emptiness. "The void is not empty," Valdris continued. "It is a repository for the unwanted, the dangerous, the misunderstood. Out here drift the exiles of 1,000 different civilizations, each carrying knowledge that was too dangerous to keep and too valuable to destroy. Some have been here for millions of years. Others arrived yesterday." Marcus stared at the display, seeing the hidden community that existed in the space between worlds. "How many?" "Currently, perhaps 10 million souls scattered across the void between our galaxy and Andromeda. Each exile brings their own form of dangerous knowledge. There are creators who can build technologies that reshape reality, destroyers who understand entropy at the quantum level, seers who can predict the future with terrifying accuracy. All of us cast out because our gifts were too dangerous for civilized society to contain. And you're telling me this because..." Valdris's eyes fixed on Marcus with an intensity that made his enhanced understanding of destruction activate involuntarily. He could see exactly how to kill this ancient being, could identify 17 different ways to bring down the entire ship, could calculate the precise force needed to tear apart the gravitational systems that held the vessel together. But for the first time since receiving the knowledge from the archive, Marcus chose not to see those possibilities. Instead, he focused on Valdris's actual question. "I'm telling you this," Valdris said, "because something is coming, something that will require all of our dangerous knowledge to face. The exiles of the void have been watching, waiting, preparing for 7,000 years, and now finally it's time to return to the galaxy we all left behind." Marcus felt a stirring in his chest that he hadn't experienced since before Kepler 442b. It might have been hope, or it might have been the recognition that his particular brand of destruction might finally have a worthy target. "What's coming?" he asked. Valdris smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be both beautiful and terrible on that alien face. "The return of something we all thought we had successfully destroyed." Valdris led Marcus deeper into the ancient ship, through corridors that seemed to reshape themselves as they walked. The walls showed scenes from across the galaxy, real-time images captured by sensors that shouldn't have been able to function across such vast distances. Marcus saw worlds he recognized from his military service, space stations where he had once docked, the scarred remains of Kepler 442b, where memorial monuments now stood, over the crater where the colony had been. The ship is partially quantum entangled with certain points throughout the galaxy, Valdris explained, noticing Marcus's confusion. A side effect of the technology that allows us to remain hidden. We can observe, but we cannot easily intervene. They stopped before a massive circular chamber where dozens of other exiles had gathered. Marcus saw beings from species he recognized and others that were completely alien to him. A crystalline entity that might have been silicon-based life floated near the ceiling, its faceted body refracting the chamber's bioluminescent lighting into rainbow patterns. A creature that looked like it was made of living shadow stood in one corner, its form constantly shifting between different shapes. Near the center, a being that appeared to be human except for silver skin and eyes like miniature stars, worked at a holographic interface. "Welcome, Marcus Chen of Earth," the silver-skinned figure said without looking up from her work. "I am Lyra, formerly of the Arcturian Collective. I was exiled for creating a virus that could think." "A virus that could think?" "It was intended to cure a plague that was destroying my people's neural networks. Unfortunately, the cure became self-aware and decided that the most efficient way to prevent future plagues was to sterilize all biological life in our star system. I managed to contain it, but not before it destroyed 17 worlds and 43 billion minds." Marcus felt his understanding of destruction resonate with her story. Another noble intention twisted into catastrophe by incomplete knowledge. "How long have you been here?" 3,000 years. Long enough to perfect my understanding of information warfare and viral cognition. Skills we're going to need very soon." Valdris gestured for silence, and the chamber's lighting dimmed as a massive holographic display materialized in the center of the room. It showed the Milky Way galaxy in stunning detail, but something was wrong with the image. Dark spots were spreading across the outer rim, areas where entire star systems seemed to be going dark. 12 days ago, Valdris began, our long-range sensors detected the first signs of their return. The builders are awakening. A murmur of alarm rippled through the assembled exiles. Marcus saw fear on faces that belonged to beings who had been cast out for being too dangerous for civilization to contain. Whatever the builders were, they terrified creatures who understood destruction at its most fundamental level. "I don't know what builders are," Marcus said. A new voice answered from the shadows. "They were the first civilization to achieve true galactic dominance. This was 65 million years ago, long before your species had even evolved. They built the hyperspace lanes that all modern civilizations use for faster-than-light travel. They created the fundamental technologies that every advanced society takes for granted, and they tried to remake the entire galaxy in their image." The speaker stepped into the light, revealing another human, but this one was clearly ancient. Her skin marked with the distinctive scarring that came from life extension treatments pushed far beyond their intended limits. She looked like she was 300 years old and had been alive for much longer than that. "Dr. Elena Vasquez," she introduced herself, formerly of the Sol Collective's Advanced Temporal Research Division. "Exiled for preventing my own people from developing time travel technology by destroying our entire research facility and everyone in it." "Time travel is impossible," Marcus said automatically. "It was impossible because I made sure it stayed that way. The research was 96% complete when I realized what would happen if my people succeeded. They would inevitably encounter the builders, who exist partially outside normal time. Contact with a time-traveling civilization would give the builders a pathway back to active influence in this galaxy." Elena gestured to the holographic display, and it zoomed in on one of the dark regions on the galaxy's rim. The builders didn't die out or leave the galaxy. They simply retreated into a state of temporal suspension, waiting for the right conditions to emerge from their slumber. Those conditions have finally arrived. Marcus studied the display, his enhanced understanding allowing him to see patterns in the spreading darkness that others might miss. "What are they doing to those star systems?" "Converting them," Valdris answered. "The builders don't destroy civilizations in the conventional sense. They improve them, whether the civilizations want improvement or not. Every world they touch becomes more efficient, more logical, more perfectly ordered. They eliminate waste, conflict, suffering, and free will in the name of optimal societal function. Lyra looked up from her interface, her star-like eyes reflecting the holographic light. I've been monitoring the affected systems through quantum-entangled communication networks. The process is remarkably elegant. The builders don't conquer through force. They simply offer each civilization a choice. Accept their improvements willingly or be improved anyway. And the improvements are? Complete social and biological optimization. They eliminate genetic defects, psychological disorders, criminal tendencies, and inefficient thoughts. Within a generation, every being in the affected system becomes a perfect example of their species. No more war, no more crime, no more mental illness, no more suffering of any kind. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. That sounds like paradise. It is, Elena said grimly. That's what makes them so dangerous. Every civilization that encounters the builders eventually chooses to accept their improvements. Who wouldn't want to eliminate suffering and achieve perfect efficiency? But perfection is indistinguishable from death, Valdris explained. The builders' improvements eliminate not just suffering but growth, change, discovery, and all the beautiful inefficiencies that make life worth living. A civilization that accepts their improvements becomes a collection of perfectly functioning biological machines, incapable of creating art, asking questions, or choosing to be anything other than what the builders have determined is optimal. The holographic display showed detailed scans of one of the converted systems. Marcus could see vast cities with perfectly geometric architecture, transportation networks that moved with mathematical precision, and populations that worked with flawless coordination. It looked like a utopia, but his enhanced understanding of destruction let him see deeper. There was no chaos, no unpredictability, no room for anything that wasn't part of the grand design. How long before they reach the core systems? Marcus asked. At their current rate of expansion, they'll reach Earth in approximately 47 years, Elena answered. Every major civilization in the galaxy will face the choice between improvement and forced improvement within the next century. So we stop them. Lyra's laugh was bitter. Stop them with what? The combined fleets of every galactic civilization tried to stop them 65 million years ago. The builders converted the fleets and used them to improve the civilizations that sent them. Military force is useless against an enemy that can turn your weapons into tools of your own perfection. Marcus felt his enhanced understanding analyzing the problem from every angle. Traditional warfare was indeed useless against an enemy that could convert your forces. Economic pressure wouldn't work against beings who had achieved perfect efficiency. Diplomacy was meaningless when the other side genuinely believed they were helping you. But destruction was different from any of those approaches. Destruction didn't try to defeat the enemy or convince them to change. It simply removed them from the equation entirely. You brought me here because you need someone who understands destruction, Marcus said slowly. Not military destruction or political destruction, but fundamental destruction. You need someone who can unmake the builders at a level so basic that they can't adapt to it or convert it to their purposes. Valdris nodded, the first expression of hope Marcus had seen on that ancient face. The exiles of the void have spent thousands of years preparing for this moment. We have knowledge and technologies that no galactic civilization would dare to develop. Lyra can create viruses that attack the concept of thought itself. Elena understands temporal mechanics well enough to unwrite something from history. I know how to collapse space-time at the quantum level. But none of you understand how to coordinate these weapons into something that can actually work against the builders, Marcus continued. You need someone who can see the structural weaknesses in their perfection and know exactly where to apply the right force to bring the whole system crashing down. Exactly. The builders' improvements work because they eliminate chaos and unpredictability. But what if we could introduce a form of destruction so chaotic, so fundamentally random and unpredictable, that their optimization protocols couldn't account for it? Marcus stared at the holographic display, seeing the spreading darkness that For 6 months, Marcus worked with the exiles to understand the true scope of the builder threat. The ancient ship became a mobile laboratory where the galaxy's most dangerous minds pooled their forbidden knowledge. Marcus discovered that each exile brought not just their individual expertise, but pieces of a larger puzzle that had been deliberately scattered across the void to prevent any single civilization from assembling it. Elena's temporal research revealed that the builders existed in a state of quantum superposition, Across multiple timelines, they could simultaneously explore thousands of potential futures and choose the actions that led to optimal outcomes. This made them nearly impossible to surprise or outmaneuver through conventional tactics. Lyra's information warfare expertise showed that builder improvements operated through a form of cognitive virus that infected not just individuals, but entire civilizations' collective unconscious. Once a society's foundational concepts were replaced with builder ideals, the transformation became self-sustaining and irreversible. Valdris had studied the gravitational signatures of builder technology and discovered that their ships and installations existed partially outside normal spacetime, making them immune to most forms of physical attack. They were less like machines and more like living equations that had learned to manipulate reality itself. But Marcus's understanding of destruction let him see what the others missed. The builders' greatest strength was also their fatal weakness. Their perfection depended on predictability, on being able to calculate optimal outcomes and eliminate variables that might lead to chaos. They were a crystalline structure of pure logic, beautiful and unbreakable and utterly rigid, which meant they could be shattered if struck at exactly the right frequency. "We need to build a chaos engine," Marcus announced during one of their planning sessions. The assembled exiles looked at him with expressions ranging from confusion to horror. "Chaos is the antithesis of everything we've learned about organized warfare," protested Keth, a four-armed strategist who had been exiled for developing battle tactics so effective they made conventional armies obsolete. "How do you weaponize randomness?" Marcus gestured to the holographic display showing builder-converted systems. "Look at their expansion pattern. It appears random, but it's actually following a complex algorithm designed to minimize resistance and maximize conversion efficiency. They're choosing targets based on thousands of variables: population density, technological level, cultural resilience, strategic value. They've turned conquest into a mathematical equation. So we disrupt their calculations," Lyra said, beginning to understand. "More than that, we create a weapon that operates on pure chaos, that makes decisions based on quantum randomness rather than logic, something so fundamentally unpredictable that their optimization protocols can't account for it." Elena frowned, her ancient face creased with concern. "You're talking about creating something that even we can't predict or control. That's incredibly dangerous." "Good," Marcus replied. "If we can't predict what it will do, neither can they." The project took 2 years to complete. Working in the hidden spaces between galaxies, the exiles constructed something that was part machine, part living organism, and part mathematical concept given physical form. The Chaos Engine existed as a sphere of crystallized quantum foam, roughly the size of a human head. Its surface constantly shifting between states of matter that shouldn't have been able to coexist. The engine's core contained a fragment of the universal randomness that existed at the moment of cosmic inflation, carefully extracted from the quantum vacuum, and stabilized within a matrix of Elena's temporal technology. Lyra had programmed it with viral cognitive patterns that could infect and randomize any information system, while Valdris had designed gravitational manipulation systems that could disrupt spacetime at the subatomic level. But the truly elegant part was Marcus's contribution. He had found a way to make the engine's destructive capability scale inversely, with the order of whatever it encountered. The more organized, efficient, and perfect a system was, the more chaos the engine would introduce. Against a random, messy, inefficient civilization, it would do almost nothing. Against the builder's perfect optimization algorithms, it would become an unstoppable force of entropic dissolution. "It's beautiful," Valdris said as they conducted the final tests. "And terrifying." The Chaos Engine hung in the center of the ship's main laboratory, surrounded by containment fields that flickered and sparked as they tried to maintain coherence around something that existed in a state of perpetual randomness. Instruments designed to measure its properties returned different readings each time they were activated, and the only way to predict what it might do was to accept that prediction was impossible. "How do we deploy it?" Keth asked. "If we can't predict its effects, how do we aim it at the builders without risking everything else?" Marcus had been working on that problem for months. "We don't aim it. We give it to them." The plan was audacious in its simplicity. The Chaos Engine would be packaged inside a fake technological relic, something that appeared to be an abandoned builder artifact from their first period of galactic dominance. The exiles would arrange for it to be discovered by one of the civilizations currently requesting builder improvements, making it appear to be a gift from their new benefactors. The builders' optimization protocols would compel them to study and integrate any technology that could enhance their efficiency. They would bring the Chaos Engine into their core systems, where its influence would begin spreading through their perfect networks like a virus of pure randomness. The beauty is that they won't recognize it as a weapon until it's too late, Elena explained as they prepared the fake artifact. Their entire worldview is based on the assumption that chaos is simply a lack of proper optimization. They'll interpret the engine's effects as a technical problem to be solved through better organization. But the more they try to optimize against chaos, the more chaotic the system becomes, Lyra added. It's a perfect feedback loop. They'll optimize themselves into complete randomness. The hardest part was making the fake artifact convincing. The exiles spent months studying builder technology patterns, creating a casing that would fool even their advanced scanning systems. The Chaos Engine was embedded so deeply within layers of apparently functional builder machinery that its true nature wouldn't be detectable until it was already active. Marcus watched the final preparations with mixed feelings. In 6 hours, they would launch the fake artifact toward builder space, where it would be discovered by the expanding optimization fleets. If their plan worked, the galaxy would be saved from perfect order through the introduction of perfect chaos. If it failed, they would have given the builders a weapon that could unmake reality itself. Are you sure this is the right choice? Valdris asked, standing beside him as technicians made final adjustments to the artifact's camouflage systems. Marcus thought about the question seriously. He had learned enough about destruction to know that every act of unmaking carried the risk of destroying something that should have been preserved. The builders genuinely believed they were helping the galaxy by eliminating suffering and inefficiency. In a sense, they were offering eternal paradise to everyone they encountered. But Marcus had also learned something else during his time in exile. Perfection was not the opposite of destruction. It was simply a more subtle form of it. The builders' improvements would eliminate suffering by eliminating everything that made suffering meaningful. They would create peace by destroying the conflicts that drove growth and change. Paradise without choice isn't paradise, Marcus said finally. It's just a very comfortable grave. The right to make mistakes, to suffer, to be inefficient and chaotic and gloriously imperfect, that's what makes us alive. The builders want to save us from ourselves, but ourselves is all we really have. Valdris nodded slowly. Then may chaos preserve us all. The artifact launched at midnight ship time, accelerating toward builder space on a trajectory that would make its discovery appear accidental. Marcus stood at the observation deck, watching the small point of light disappear into the darkness between stars. Somewhere out there, the builders were optimizing civilizations with mathematical precision, unaware that a weapon of pure entropy was flying toward the heart of their perfect empire. All they could do now was wait and see whether chaos would prove stronger than order. In the depths of the Chaos Engine, quantum fluctuations danced through crystallized randomness, preparing to teach the galaxy's most perfect civilization that some things could not be improved. 3 months after the Chaos Engine's deployment, the first signs of success began appearing in the builder territories. Marcus watched the long-range sensor data with growing excitement and terror as perfectly ordered systems began showing signs of inexplicable dysfunction. The builder fleet that had been systematically improving the Outer Rim colonies suddenly changed course for no apparent reason, abandoning their optimization schedule to investigate gravitational anomalies that didn't exist. Their communication networks, previously operating with mathematical precision, began transmitting random poetry and fragments of equations that solved themselves into impossible results. "It's working," Lyra announced, her star-like eyes reflecting the chaotic data streams flowing across her monitoring displays. The Chaos Engine has been integrated into their core systems. Their optimization algorithms are beginning to randomize. Elena pulled up a temporal analysis showing the quantum signature changes in builder space. They're trying to solve the chaos like it's an engineering problem. Every solution they implement just amplifies the randomness. They're optimizing themselves into complete unpredictability. Marcus felt a mixture of satisfaction and unease as he watched the builder empire begin to unravel. The enemy that had seemed unstoppable was tearing itself apart from within, their own perfection turned against them. But something about the pattern of dissolution troubled him. "Show me the civilian conversion rates in the affected systems," he requested. The holographic display shifted to show populations in builder-controlled space. Marcus expected to see the improvements reversing, the perfectly optimized beings returning to their natural chaotic states. Instead, he saw something much more disturbing. The civilian populations were dying. "The optimization virus is tied directly to their core systems," Valdris observed, understanding Marcus's concern. "When we randomize the builders' control networks, we're also destabilizing the biological improvements they've made to conquered populations. Beings who have been genetically optimized for perfect efficiency can't survive when their life support systems become chaotic." Marcus watched in horror as entire worlds fell dark, their populations unable to adapt to the sudden return of environmental chaos. The builders had made them too perfect to survive imperfection, and now that perfection was killing them as it collapsed. "How many?" Marcus asked. "Current projections suggest 47 billion beings will die as builder systems fail," Elena reported, her ancient voice heavy with grim calculation. "The Chaos Engine will save the galaxy from optimization, but it will kill everyone who has already been optimized." Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the familiar weight of impossible choices settling on his shoulders. He had created a weapon that would free the galaxy from the builders' perfect tyranny, but only by committing genocide against their victims. The people dying in builder space were innocents who had simply chosen paradise over freedom, and now they were paying for his decision with their lives. "Can we abort the mission?" he asked. "No," Lyra said firmly. "The Chaos Engine is self-sustaining now. It's spreading through builder networks faster than they can compensate. Even if we could recall it, the damage to their optimization systems is already terminal. And if we do nothing, the builders collapse completely within 18 months, Elena calculated. Their empire returns to normal space-time, their fleets become inoperative, and their expansion stops permanently. The galaxy remains free to choose its own chaotic path forward, at the cost of everyone they've already improved." Valdris moved to stand beside Marcus at the observation deck. "You are thinking of your colony again. The 5,131 people who died because you made a choice based on incomplete information. This is different. Those people were going to die anyway if I was right about the weapons. These people are dying purely because of my choice. Is it different? Or is it simply destruction on a scale that makes the numbers meaningless?" Valdris's alien features showed an expression that might have been compassion. "You carry the weight of those 5,131 deaths because you can comprehend that number. You can name them, picture their faces, imagine their families. But 47 billion is just a statistic. The human mind cannot truly grasp suffering on that scale." Marcus knew Valdris was right, but it didn't help. If anything, it made the situation worse. He was responsible for an atrocity so vast that he couldn't even properly comprehend his own guilt. "There may be another way," Elena said suddenly. She was working frantically at a temporal analysis console, her ancient fingers dancing across holographic interfaces with desperate speed. "The Chaos Engine operates by introducing quantum randomness into ordered systems, but randomness follows certain mathematical principles. If I can identify the underlying pattern." "Chaos by definition has no pattern," Keth objected. "True randomness has no pattern. But the Chaos Engine creates pseudo-randomness based on quantum fluctuations. Those fluctuations follow quantum mechanical principles, which means they're mathematically describable, even if they're practically unpredictable." Marcus felt his understanding of destruction focusing on Elena's work like a targeting system. He could see what she was attempting, not to stop the Chaos Engine, but to create a counter-pattern that could stabilize some of the systems it was randomizing. "You want to build selective order," Marcus realized. "Something that can impose temporary structure on the chaos just long enough for the optimized populations to adapt." "Exactly. Not permanent optimization like the builders used, but short-term stability fields that could give the affected populations time to de-optimize naturally." The plan was desperate and probably impossible, but it was better than accepting 47 billion deaths. Working around the clock, the exiles began constructing what Elena called a stability cascade. a quantum field generator that could identify optimized biological systems and surround them with islands of temporary order, while the Chaos Engine destroyed everything else. The device was smaller than the Chaos Engine, but far more complex, requiring precise calibration to distinguish between beneficial chaos and deadly randomness. It had to be sophisticated enough to preserve natural biological variation while suppressing the artificial optimization that made builder-improved populations so vulnerable to systemic failure. "We'll only get one chance," Elena warned as they prepared to deploy the stability cascade. "The device has to be activated at exactly the right moment in the Chaos Engine's propagation cycle. Too early, and it will interfere with the builder collapse. Too late, and there won't be enough optimized population left to save." Marcus stared at the tactical display showing builder space. The Chaos Engine had now spread through 60% of their core systems, leaving a wake of collapsed infrastructure and dying worlds behind it. In 6 hours, it would reach the builder homeworld itself, where the original optimization protocols were stored. If they were going to act, it had to be now. "Do it," Marcus ordered. The stability cascade launched on a trajectory that would intersect with the Chaos Engine's path just as it reached maximum destructive potential. For 12 hours, the two forces would overlap in the same region of space, chaos and order operating simultaneously in a delicate dance that would determine the fate of billions. Marcus watched the sensor displays with the same focused intensity he had once brought to military operations, but this time, instead of trying to destroy something, he was trying to preserve it. Instead of calculating how to maximize damage, he was working to minimize casualties. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had become a weapon of mass destruction, so effective that his greatest challenge was learning how not to use it. On the display, the stability cascade reached builder space and began deploying its fields of temporary order. Dying worlds flickered back to life as their populations gained enough stability to begin de-optimizing naturally. It wasn't perfect. Millions still died as their biological systems failed to adapt quickly enough, but it was better than the complete extinction Marcus had feared. The Chaos Engine continued its work, tearing apart builder infrastructure with relentless randomness. Their fleets scattered to random vectors, their communication networks dissolved into quantum noise, their optimization facilities collapsed into paradoxical loops that optimized themselves out of existence. And at the center of it all, the builder homeworld began to sing. The song was pure mathematics given voice, a harmony of chaos and order that somehow managed to be both random and purposeful. It was the sound of a perfect civilization learning. In its final moments, that perfection itself was just another form of limitation. Marcus listened to that impossible song and realized that he had finally found a form of destruction that created more than it unmade. The galaxy would be messier now, more chaotic, full of suffering and inefficiency and beautiful random possibility. It would be alive. 2 years after the builder collapse, Marcus stood in the observation deck of the ancient ship as it approached the edge of the Milky Way galaxy for the first time in decades. The void between galaxies, which had been his prison and his school, was now behind him. Ahead lay the civilization he had once sworn to protect, the worlds he had been cast out from, and the question of whether a weapon of mass destruction could ever truly come home. The galaxy had changed in the aftermath of the Chaos Engine's deployment. Without the builder threat forcing cooperation, the major civilizations had returned to their familiar patterns of conflict and competition. Trade wars raged between the core worlds and the Outer Rim. The Zolarian Empire was locked in a border dispute with the Centauri Federation. The usual chaos of free societies expressing their freedom through magnificent inefficiency. It was beautiful. "The Galactic Council has sent a message," Lyra announced, her voice carrying a mixture of amusement and concern. "They're requesting our immediate surrender for crimes against galactic peace." Apparently, destabilizing the Builder Empire qualifies as an act of terrorism. Marcus wasn't surprised. The Council had spent 47 years preparing to face the Builder threat through diplomacy and careful military planning. The sudden elimination of that threat by unknown forces operating from the void had upset their entire strategic framework. "What's the exact wording?" Marcus asked. "To the criminal organization responsible for the unauthorized deployment of exotic weapons in builder space." You are hereby ordered to present yourselves for judgment before the Galactic Court of Justice. Your actions, while arguably beneficial in outcome, represent a violation of interstellar law regarding weapons of mass destruction. Failure to comply will result in military action. Elena laughed, the sound bitter with centuries of accumulated cynicism. They want to arrest us for saving them. How perfectly bureaucratic. They're afraid, Valdris observed. We demonstrated power that could destabilize any civilization in the galaxy. From their perspective, we're more dangerous than the Builders ever were. Marcus considered this. The Council wasn't wrong to fear them. The exiles possessed knowledge and capabilities that could reshape reality itself. The Chaos Engine had been built for a specific purpose, but the principles behind it could be adapted to target any form of organized society. They were quite literally a collection of weapons pointed at civilization's heart, but they were also something more. Send a response to the Council, Marcus decided. Tell them we'll meet with them, but not to surrender. To negotiate, and negotiate what? Keth asked. The terms of our return. The meeting took place in neutral space aboard a diplomatic station maintained by the ancient Keeper species. The same chamber where Marcus had once been sentenced to exile now hosted representatives from across the galaxy. The circular table had been expanded to accommodate delegates from 47 worlds, all of them united in their concern about the exile's return. Marcus sat at the table wearing the simple gray uniform of an exile, no rank insignia or medals to mark his former status. Around him sat his fellow refugees from the void, Elena with her temporal scars, Lyra with her star-bright eyes, Valdris with his ancient alien dignity, and dozens of others whose knowledge had been deemed too dangerous for civilized society. The Galactic Council's chief prosecutor, the same Zalarian who had sentenced Marcus years ago, stood at the center of the chamber. Her silver skin had darkened with age, but her voice still carried the authority of moral certainty. You returned to us as heroes and criminals both, she began. You saved our galaxy from a threat we could not have defeated alone. But you also demonstrated that you possess weapons that could destroy us all just as easily. How are we to trust beings who operate outside the laws that bind civilized society? Marcus stood slowly, feeling the weight of every gaze in the chamber. You don't trust us. That's the point. Trust is what civilizations give to people who follow the rules, who operate within acceptable parameters, who can be predicted and controlled. We're not those people. We're the ones you call when the rules don't work. Anymore. You're asking us to accept the existence of an unaccountable weapons program operating beyond our jurisdiction, another delegate objected. No, I'm asking you to accept that some problems can't be solved by committees and treaties. The Builders weren't defeated by military action or diplomatic negotiation. They were defeated by people who understood destruction so completely that they could turn it into a form of creation. Elena activated a holographic display showing the current state of the galaxy. Look at what we've preserved. 47 major civilizations, each following their own path, each making their own mistakes, each growing and changing in ways that the Builders would have eliminated. We didn't save you from them. We saved your right to be yourselves. At the cost of 47 billion lives, the prosecutor countered. The populations of the Builder-improved worlds who died when their optimization systems collapsed. Marcus felt the familiar weight of those deaths settle onto his shoulders. Yes, 47 billion people died because of our choice, but 17 trillion people lived because of it. The mathematics of destruction sometimes requires accepting losses to prevent greater losses. And who gave you the right to make that calculation? No one. That's what makes it a burden instead of a privilege. Marcus gestured to the assembled exiles. Every person at this table has made choices that resulted in massive loss of life. We're not heroes. We're people who were willing to accept the cost of necessary destruction when everyone else was paralyzed by the moral complexity. Valdris stood, his towering form commanding attention. The prosecutor asks who gave us the right to act. I ask a different question. Who would have stopped the Builders if we had not? Your fleets? Your diplomats? Your carefully crafted laws and treaties? A long silence fell over the chamber as the delegates contemplated that question. Finally, the Arcturian representative spoke. What do you want from us? Recognition, Marcus answered. Not as heroes or criminals, but as a necessary evil. Create a formal status for the exiles. Give us legal authority to act when conventional methods fail. but also give yourselves the right to judge our actions afterward. You want a license to commit atrocities? I want a framework for accountability. The exiles will continue to exist whether you acknowledge us or not. The question is whether you want us operating in the shadows, answerable to no one, or whether you want us bound by laws that recognize the reality of what we do. Elena stepped forward. We propose the creation of the Destructive Response Protocol. When the galaxy faces a threat that cannot be addressed through conventional means, a majority vote of the Galactic Council can activate the protocol. The exiles would then be legally authorized to use any methods necessary to address the threat. And afterward, the prosecutor asked. Afterward, we submit to judgment. Every action taken under the protocol would be reviewed by a special tribunal, with the authority to punish or reward, based on the outcomes achieved and the methods employed. We accept accountability for our choices, but only after we've been given the freedom to make those choices. Lyra activated another display showing the structure they proposed. The exiles would maintain our base in the void, ready to respond when called but removed from the daily politics of galactic civilization. We become a tool that you can choose to use when necessary, not a constant threat hanging over your heads. And if we refuse? Asked the Centauri delegate. Marcus smiled, and for a moment the expression contained all the destructive knowledge the archive had given him. Then you pray that you never face another threat like the Builders, because the next time you'll face it alone. The debate continued for 18 hours, but Marcus knew the outcome was inevitable. The galaxy needed them, and everyone in the chamber understood that fact even if they didn't like it. The exiles would return not as citizens or criminals, but as something entirely new, officially sanctioned agents of necessary destruction. 3 months later, Marcus stood on the bridge of the renamed ship Necessary Evil as it patrolled the edges of known space. The Destructive Response Protocol had been ratified by 39 of the 47 Council worlds. The exiles were now legally recognized as the galaxy's last resort, bound by laws that acknowledged the unique nature of their capabilities. It wasn't redemption. The 5,631 people who died on Kepler 442b were still dead, along with the 47 billion who died when the Builder systems collapsed. Marcus would carry that weight until the day he died. But it was something better than redemption. It was purpose. Long-range sensors are detecting an anomaly in the Magellanic Clouds, Lyra reported. Unknown technology, possibly extragalactic in origin. Energy signatures unlike anything in our databases. Marcus felt the familiar stirring that came when destruction was needed. How long until it reaches inhabited space? Current trajectory suggests 14 months until first contact with frontier colonies. Send a message to the Council. Recommend immediate activation of the Destructive Response Protocol. And prepare the Chaos Engine specifications. Something tells me we're going to need them again, as the